Good afternoon and welcome back to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the MarketSite, we have Jamie Singleton. He's the CEO of the Curex Group, and we're going to focus on FX today, which is something that we don't normally focus on for Trade Talks, but everyone should matter. Why are institutions in particular, why are they focusing on FX now?
Well, it's one of these elements in the capital markets where there hasn't been a lot of transparency, so the cost of execution is incredibly important. Over the last 10 years, really, the institutional market's changed, and it's changed because there's been enforcement actions and new regulations that have come to bear. So it's created a higher level of responsibility for every asset manager really around the world to care much more about how FX is executed.
We talk a lot about the equity and bond market structure here on Trade Talks. Are some of the issues that you see with FX market structure, is it similar to what we talk about in the equity markets?
It's interesting because technology has been a very dynamic factor in changing FX. We're a credit-driven market. So if you're an institution and you need to transact and access the marketplace, you have to do so in a cumbersome manner traditionally and currently. Everyone has ISDA agreements with separate banks. When you want to survey the market, you oftentimes have to check with many different parties in order to determine a price. Nasdaq, New York Stock Exchange, all of the equity markets work in an exchange-like environment where many people can see a common set of prices made by market makers. All of this is changing. We operate a platform that's very similar to an equity exchange. We have market makers who are providing prices, and we connect institutions who can see those prices and execute at a top of book.
So it sounds like transparency is really going to be the solution that you're looking for in the FX market. In addition to transparency, do you see it going more electronic like the bonds are going?
Yes, clearly. And the extraordinary thing, Jill, is that even today, many large institutions still execute with voice. The growth of technology and the electronic execution of FX is exponentially going. 2 years ago, the FX market really started to look at providing access to institutions to use algorithms.
Right.
So if you think about the equity markets and how that market's got so taken over really from an execution standpoint using algorithms, FX is just kind of at the beginning of that stage.
Right, and so what do you think it's going to look like in 5 years from now? Is it going to be more retail friendly, if you will? Is it going to make institutional trading more efficient, just like what we're constantly evolving with in the equity markets?
I think the efficiency is really where we're going. Part of our mantra is to improve the FX trading outcomes for every institution that we deal with.
Right.
So I think this issue of transparency is kind of step one. We also kind of look at fairness, because transparency is an element, but you also have a democratic access point where people can actually see the same price, and that's been a challenge in FX because we're a $5 trillion daily market.
Right.
We're massive, and we're 24 hours a day. We don't shut down at 4 o'clock. We operate around the clock. We close down Friday at 5 o'clock and open up Sunday afternoon when Asia opens.
Right.
So there are different challenges: massive microsecond market, liquidity being provided by many different entities, and that liquidity being taken by lots. Some are FX trading hedge funds, for instance, that are high frequency, and some are what we call the real money users, the corporations, the pension funds, the sovereign wealth funds that have a real reason for executing FX.
All right, and that's what you're doing over at Curex, is to kind of give a centralized platform where everyone can see all of this pricing.
And we also provide access to data analytics, and we're in business with FTSE Russell and have a benchmark with them that's actually unique in the marketplace.
All right, well, thank you for joining us at MarketSite.
Pleasure.
And thank you for joining me throughout the day. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.